There will be times in our lives when the gospel doesn't get 45 minutes. The theological treatise is out the door. The explanation of the Romans Road, too much for the moment. I still believe the best testimony in the history of time is 6 words. I was blind, now I see. What more is there?
Welcome to StoryPower TV. I'm so glad you're here today. You know, we always ask the same question on this show. 2 questions. Who is Jesus to you, and why do I care? And I can tell you through the journeys of life, there are a lot of things that happen to us, a lot of things that happen for us, and a lot of things that happen around us. And in every one of those, we're all still asking the same question. Where was Jesus when that happened, and why did it happen to me? Was it a good idea? Was it a bad idea? Was it my fault? Was it somebody else's fault? It doesn't really matter if you know where Jesus was when it happened. Well, today we're going to speak with a couple of young ladies, mother and daughter, Tegan and Amy, who are going to talk to us about what it's like to go through life when it's not what you planned for it to be. It's not exactly what you wanted it to be. But you don't get to start over every time. You just get to do the best you got from where you are. So help me welcome Amy and Tegan. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to meet you, Missy. So tell me a little bit about your story. I see you've got 2 beautiful books here. And I'll let either one of you start. It's up to you.
Sure. So my name's Amy Tyson, and I am one of those individuals. I have been divorced twice. I have 3 daughters from those marriages, and I have chosen to take what I've been through and turn it into something to help other people to find happiness in the midst of their heartache.
Okay.
I am the main character of this beautiful book, one of them. And this really helps me because sometimes when I feel sad or something that my parents are divorced, it really helps me when that's there.
How old are you, Tegan?
I'm 11.
How old were you when the divorce happened?
Wasn't I 6?
You were 5.
I was 5.
Mm-hmm.
You were 5. So you remember it well?
I don't remember it really well, but I remember it pretty well.
Was it scary?
I mean, as a 5-year-old, I really didn't understand most of the stuff. I just knew that both of my parents were splitting up. I mean, it was kind of, but, I mean, I was a 5-year-old. I didn't understand much.
So when you were 7, is that when you understood?
I think when I was about 8, I started to understand it, and that's when I really was like, my parents are divorced. Wow, I didn't know. Like, I didn't really even know what divorce really was, and yeah.
So now that you're looking back with all this wisdom at 11 years old, what would you say to another young lady whose parents are about to go through a divorce?
If someone was my age, I would probably say, have you met Jesus? And I'd ask them, like, if they've met him and if, like, they know, stuff like that. And then if they haven't, I'd, like, help them invite and stuff. And then I'd also tell them about my mom's book, and I'd, like, put them in my feet, and I'd help them.
What does Jesus have to do with the divorce?
He can help you through a lot of things through divorce. Like if you pray to him, he'll probably help you. He will, in fact. Yeah.
Very good. So, Mom, what made you write the book?
Well, years and years ago, when I was going through my first divorce, I really didn't have a lot of friends who had been through that. I had been a teacher and was a stay-at-home mom. And my main concern was, how was I going to tell my 2 daughters that I had at the time that were 4.5 and 7.5? I just didn't even know how to have that conversation. And so I reached out to my local church, and I talked to the children's pastor, and she provided me with a resource and kind of told me, here's what you say, and you go to a place you've never been to and you'll never go back to. And so I did that, and their father met us there, and among all things, I spread out a princess blanket for us to sit on. And I read this story to them that had been loaned to me, and unfortunately, I was not able to soften the blow. And my daughters hated the day, which obviously all children are going to not like that day because there's a lot of unknowns for them, and their world is changing forever. But to make matters worse, I wasn't able to soften that blow, even though I used the resource that I had been provided. Years and years and years later, I now have a third little girl, and she was around 5, and I had left that marriage, and I wasn't even looking at how to tell Tegan, because to be quite honest, I felt like a complete failure, because in my eyes, here I was going through divorce number 2, and who goes through 2 divorces, and now I've got to tell another daughter that her father and I aren't staying together, and I just couldn't even deal with that at the time. And I remember I was in my bedroom, and I was in the middle of folding laundry, and
that's where some of the best thinking is done, right?
Right.
Folding laundry and in the shower.
And all of a sudden, the phrase "one princess, 2 castles" comes into my head, and at the time, I just remember thinking, this is very strange. Like, nothing had ever come into my mind like that before. And I remember thinking, it was so clear to me that I had to stop, and I wrote it down on a little scrap of paper, and that scrap of paper is now in my safety deposit box today. But at that point, I wrote it on a scrap of paper, and I put it in a little silver box, and I did nothing with it. All I knew was that it was very clear, and nothing like that had ever happened before. Went back to folding laundry, and months go by, and it is now time. I have got to tell Tegan. And there's double the pressure on me, because my 2 oldest daughters, who were now about to enter high school and the other one's about out of high school, still very much remembered the day that I told them when they were 4 and a half and 7 and a half. And still very much remembered the book. And I just remember thinking, if a book has that much power over a child, I've got to get it right this time. And so at that point, I reached out to the counselor at my youngest daughter's school. She did not have a book on hand, but recommended one off of Amazon. And so I ordered it, and it came in as I'm sitting home alone in my apartment. And I remember going into my bedroom, closing the door, even though I was home alone, but just because I had this feeling of I really had to hone in and focus on it. And I sat down on the floor across from my nightstand with this book in my lap. And I just remember being put off as I just stared at the title. And I thought to myself, you've got to read it, because this was recommended to you, and you've got to get this right. And I start to read through the book, and I just shut it. And I got up and I threw it in the trash, to be really honest. And I just knew.
Was that good?
It was not good. Because in my mind, this was just not the way to go about it, or at least not the way I wanted to tell my little girl. And at that point, she was all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about the millions of other children that are facing their family splitting. And so soon thereafter, I sat down at my desk and I wrote what so many family law firms across Texas carry for their clients, which is the book, One Princess, 2 Castles. And it is what I read to Tegan to tell her that her dad and I would no longer be staying together. Although when I read it to her, it was just on printer paper. There were no illustrations, because I can't draw to save my life. It was just a story. And I wanted a way to tell Tegan that although things were going to be different, they were going to be good. And that's the main phrase that's repeated in the book. And I also wanted a way for her to be able to embrace her feelings, but also to be really excited to spend time with both me and her father, regardless of what was going on, because I firmly believe that a child should be able to enjoy spending time with both of their parents. And I feel like that is both parents' responsibility to help facilitate that, and that even in the darkest of situations, something good can come from that if you are really diligent about looking at it that way and looking for it. And so it's just become my mission to help families find happiness in the midst of their heartache.
Now, I can imagine in a book like this, obviously I have not read it, but in a book like this, that there's a lot of subtext conversation that's not just mother to daughter, but it's also educational for the parents to say, you know, if your mom and dad in the situation, just because you can't get along with each other doesn't mean that either one of you loves your child less.
Absolutely, yes. And so it really does, it's a great message for children. And I believe that One Princess, 2 Castles gives children a character they can actually identify with, someone who has been through something that is very common nationwide and around the world and has come through on the other side. But through the book, it also helps to facilitate healthy co-parenting. And like I said at the time, when One Princess, Two Castles came into my head, I thought it was strange. Remember, I wrote it down. And through the way my life has gone, it's become very apparent that was the Lord speaking that title into my heart. And I've seen him move mountains in my life. And I know sometimes people probably think it's strange. Here's this woman with this huge faith, and she's always talking about divorce. And there's so many Christians that walk through divorce. And I'm just here to help everyone, Christian or non-Christian, walk that in a better way.
Well, a lot of people in the world of faith would say that divorce disqualifies you for a lot of things. In fact, my wife was divorced when I married her, my first and only marriage, and her second. But she had a daughter. My redheaded stepchild is now 35 years old. But when we met, I called back to the church that I preached in for 2 years in England. And when the guy heard that I married a woman that was divorced, he hung up. Has never returned my phone call since then.
Well, that's his loss, I would say that.
How do you overcome that stigma of divorce in so many Christians' eyes, especially the hyper-religious eyes, being the unpardonable sin?
Well, I will say that when I was walking through my second divorce, it was a battle to walk through the church doors every day, every Sunday. And I never gave up on that. And it wasn't because anybody ever spoke anything over me at church.
It was an internal condemnation.
It was Satan. I know that was Satan trying to make me not want to go to church. And it didn't matter how I felt. I was diligent in going to church, sitting on that pew alone and trying to sit on that first or second row, lifting my hands and praying, sometimes with tears just streaming down my face. And I really have never felt judgment, although I know that it is out there for some people. I choose my circles very carefully and the church that I go to very carefully. I don't believe that divorce disqualifies you. I believe that the Lord brings us through certain things for a reason. And if I hadn't walked this, I wouldn't be able to minister to the individuals that are out there.
And you have never had a reason to write a book like this?
Absolutely, I wouldn't have. And it's hard to minister to people if you haven't walked in certain shoes. Did I enjoy walking in those shoes? I did not, but I know that it's helped to shape me to the woman that I am today and the mom that I am, and also helped to shape my children.
So how are your older girls dealing with second divorce now? I see you're wearing a ring again.
Yes, I am.
Recently married.
And I am remarried. I got remarried this past summer. And who would have thought that through writing my book, that would have helped me to meet the husband that I have today. And so...
now, did he come with kids as well?
He has grown children.
Okay.
So, yeah. So his are quite a bit older than mine. And but, yeah, I actually met him. He was one of the offices that I called on. And so became friends and... went from there. So, but yeah, I know my older girls, it has shaped who they've become today. They're very independent, hardworking women, and
what do they think of the book?
They like it a lot. So I think, when
do you hear comments like, "Mom, why didn't you have that book when it was our turn"?
No, but they just very much remembered that first book.
I bet.
And so I think they're pretty proud of who their mom has become in not giving up on her goal and her dreams to help other people. Because I know when it first started, I think people probably thought, oh, she's written this book, where's she going to go with it from here,
Right.
But I just know with all my heart that God's called me to help families that are going through a split.
I coach a lot of speakers, and one of the challenges that I find on a regular basis is people who feel like they have a solution, but their solution is a one-off. When you have the solution for the Rubik's Cube, it doesn't matter what your race is, what your age is, what your color is, what your educational background is, what your age is. When you pick up the Rubik's Cube, if you have the solution, it solves every time, because that's the solution to the Rubik's Cube. I find a lot of people have a solution, but it only works for them. And the ability to transfer that solution to somebody else, to be able to say, this is what I did, and it worked for me, and I promise if you'll do the same thing, you'll get similar or the same results. What kind of success have you seen in the numbers of people who've read the book and applied it in their relationships?
Well, I'll tell you, the feedback from the family law firms has been very positive. It gives their clients, a visual that they can guide the conversation. And then I had a single father tell me he'd been divorced for years, amicable situation. At the time, he had a second-grade daughter when he was telling me this, and he said, Amy, every time she's come into my house, his house, she's pulling out the book. And that's when it hit me that it really does give children, even if they're, years out into the journey of divorce, a character that they can identify with, that's been through something very common yet incredibly difficult, and give them inspiration that, things can be different but still be very good, very good.
So, Tegan, what kind of relationship do you have with the kids around you? Because I know divorce is not an uncommon thing, which means there's probably kids in your circle who have either experienced it or their parents are arguing about it or talking about it now. What kind of conversations does that lead to for you?
Honestly, right now, at this point, it hasn't led to any, but, I've talked to my friends before, I'm like, y'all really don't understand? They do understand, but they're like, what is it like? And I'm like, well, honestly, it's good at times, but at times it's like, I wonder what it would be like if if my parents were still married and stuff, like that. Yeah.
So you were 5. You still remember your dad. Do you have a good relationship with your dad now?
I do.
And how's your relationship with Mom's new husband? Do you call him dad? Do you call him stepdad? What do you call him?
I call him by his first name.
Okay. And how do you feel about that?
Honestly, I feel like he's the same dad that I've always had, and yeah.
Good. So you have a good relationship with him?
Mm-hmm.
I still have a good relationship with my redheaded stepchild. We go see her 2 or 3 times a year when we get the chance. She has 3 boys, and they are a handful, but she's still my redheaded stepchild, and she still calls me dad. It's not an easy relationship. Step-parenting is not easy at all, but probably not as hard as being the child not seeing their parents. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 4, and then she was widowed when I was 9. I was 42 when my dad said to me, look, when your older sister came along, Mom and I were still in high school, and she dropped out of school to be a mom in the 11th grade. She never went back. He said, I dropped out my senior year when you were born to go get a job because I couldn't raise 2 kids. He said, I never expected to have the first kid. I was not ready to have the second kid, and you were the reason I left. I was 4 when they got divorced. He never came back. When I was 42, he told me I never really expected to be a father of a son. And we've had more conversation today than my father and I have in the last 12 months.
Oh, wow.
And he's been in the hospital with heart attacks 3 times.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So being a dad is a full-time job all by itself. And it's not easy work. I've raised 4. We have 10 grandkids. And it's hard work. It's hard being a human worth being a parent. It's hard work all by itself. But when you put on that the pressure of doing that from 2 different castles, that's a whole different thing. So what kind of advice would you have for young moms who are thinking, I don't want to go through a divorce, but I'm not being left any options, and I'm going to have to move along, and I don't want my kids to be devastated by this? What would you say to them?
I would say, number 1, don't let your fear cripple you. You can have a very happy home as a single parent home. With that being said, that I am a strong believer that it is very vital that that child is able to look at both the mom and the dad as their heroes. And it is your job, no matter what is going on, setting aside any safety concerns. But besides that, it's your job as a parent to help your child love their other parent. You want them to have a healthy relationship because that can very much shape who they become now and years down the road. And I really do believe the way a divorce is handled not only affects you as the mom or the dad and not just your children, but generations to come. And it very much becomes a cycle because it's monkey see, monkey do. And as a believer, I have seen my God provide for my children and I in ways that I just did not see possible. And you can completely start over even from losing just about everything and have a very healthy, happy home. And it is truly what you make it. And so I would love for you to reach out, and I'm happy to guide you the best that I can.
Now, I would be willing to say there's a lot in the process as a mom, especially the guilt, the condemnation, the self-imposed blame and shame, that in order to move forward in the way that you want to, demands a lot of inner healing.
It does. And I was very intentional about staying in the Word and listening to podcasts, listening to a lot of praise music so that I could get my mind where it was. But I also, especially after going through 2, I had to take a long look at why I was choosing certain people in my life and why I was making decisions that I did. And because you do have to take responsibility for certain things. And you do have to heal in order to move forward, because I knew that I wanted my life to look very different, and I have to take accountability for that. And I just was determined to make the different good.
So do you feel like this is the only book in this series, or do you think there's one about personal accountability and internal inventory?
Well, so the second thing that I've written is called Little Hearts, Big Feelings, and it is a journal that guides children that are going through the split, whether it's fresh or whether it's years down the road, and it's for children ages 4 to 14, and it gives them a prompt and they draw out their feelings, and so it's very helpful for the child to be able to communicate through drawings, because a lot of times, even as adults, right, it's hard to communicate your feelings verbally. So it helps to facilitate hope, healing, and comfort, but then it also gives those parents an insight into how their child is feeling and how they can help them. But I have written other books. It just takes a lot to get them published.
Yes.
But I am in the works of something for adults as well. So.
And is it along the same lines?
It is.
Okay. Any ideas when that might be available?
No, I'm working on it right now.
So are you in the ideation phase or in the writing phase?
Writing phase. I'm in the writing phase. And I just recently got certified to be a divorce coach. So
I didn't know there was such a thing.
There is such a thing. And so I can be individuals' thinking partners. And my goal is to help individuals divorce differently and to be their best self and to end one chapter with grace and begin a new one with confidence.
So where in that cycle do you come in? Because I know there's pre-marriage counseling and there's marriage counseling and there's therapy and then there's arbitration and then there's the legal. Where do you fit in that process?
So people can meet with me when they're just considering divorce. They may decide, you know what, after they talk with me that that's not the route that they want to go. They could be in the middle of litigation, just served papers, maybe they just filed, or they could already be finished with their divorce and they just feel stuck. What am I going to do next? Or how on earth am I going to co-parent with this person?
Right.
And so not only can I help individuals that are going through the divorce process, whether they have children or not, but I can also help coach them on co-parenting to be the best co-parent they possibly can be.
Very good. Tegan, how has all this changed your life in the last 6 years?
It's made me a better person, honestly, in my opinion. Like, Jesus has really helped me through this at times, like when I was little, he did. And sometimes I still pray about it and stuff like that.
And what do you pray?
Like, God, like, please get me through this and, like, stuff like that.
And how does he answer?
He answers, like, he guides me through it and stuff.
Like giving you good answers, giving you good decisions, making the right questions? Do you ever see people come into your life that you don't think would be there if it hadn't been for this book?
Oh, my stepdad, and I think that's all.
Okay. Have you finished your journal?
I'm about halfway through.
And do you like it on paper, or would you be happier if it was on an iPad?
I like it on paper. I am not good at drawing on technology at all.
Do you use single colors or lots of colors when you draw?
I use single colors.
Why?
I'm bad at coloring and stuff.
Oh. Do you see in colors?
I do.
When you see life, does it look really colorful?
Mm-hmm.
Like Skittles and rainbows?
Yeah.
Okay. Not everybody does. I mean, some are technically colorblind, but for most people, life is black and white. And it's hard to see all the colors of life. I just noticed Mom put all the colors on the cover. So I thought maybe that was because of you and your Skittle brain. Do you have Skittle brain?
Yes.
What's your favorite subject in school?
English and Bible.
Are you homeschooled?
I go to a private school.
Okay. Why do you like the Bible?
We do a lot of interesting stuff, and we do a lot of things where, like, we get to act out. Like, he'll give us, like, some Bible stories, like, what was the last one I did? It was, like, the one with the widow, and where, what was his name? Elijah, or someone brought the oil. The widow had oil and a little bit of flour, and they made bread, and, like, it never ran out. And we got to act that out, and we do that a lot.
Were you the widow?
Really fun. Who was I? I was the son, and the end part.
So you were running back and forth, getting oil and stuff, pictures from everybody else. Cool. And why English?
English, I really enjoy writing, and we do a lot of fun stuff in there too. Like, I enjoy iExcel. It's this thing. It's on technology. And you just answer all these really fun questions, and I think it's really fun. And I also love to write stories.
Really? What kind of stories do you write? Are they fiction stories, imaginary stories? Are they kind of fiction? Are they more reality? Are they stories from your own life?
They're more realistic fiction. Like, I like to write stuff, so there's this book, it's called Dork Diaries, and I like to write books like that, sort of. Yeah.
So you like to write books like Dork Diary? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the name of that? There was a book called No Good, Very Bad Day. Mm-hmm. Is that the same series? Mm-mm. Okay. I think my son enjoyed that book. He's dyslexic, so he doesn't read much. He didn't then, he does now. He studies a lot of leadership now, which is really kind of ironic. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to read anything, and then he joined this MLM and started reading everything. And he's like, Dad, I've got this reading list of books that I have to have. And I'm like, okay. He's like, well, I got to go to Half Price Books. Can I borrow some money? I'm like, before I give you money, why don't you go look in the library? And he came back out, and he's like, you have 14 of the 16. I'm like, what 2 do I not have? And then I told him I wouldn't read those anyway. So
Oh, wow.
I don't know if he had them or not. What kind of books do you have in your library?
I have the whole Dork Diary series. I have a few of the Babysitter's Club graphic novels. And I have a lot of Magic Puppies, Magic Bunny, and Magic Kitties. And then I also have, what is that book called? Cat Kid Comic Club.
Is it a comic book, or is it just a book about comics? Okay. Because I know there are a lot of books that are about comics, but they're not actually comics.
Yeah.
Very good. What would you say to young girls in your position right now? I know you've already said, if you don't know Jesus, ask him. Any other words for young ladies who are trying to figure it out?
No.
Nope.
Sorry.
That's the best word? It's a good word. There's no question. Excellent. Any last thoughts from you, Amy?
No, just other than I have seen firsthand that, my God is my Redeemer, my protector, my provider, and the one I look to for everything. And he won't fail you if you will just turn to him.
Amen. Very good and very true. How can people find you and find the book?
Sure. So you can find my books on my website, which is happinessintheheartache.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I have 2 different pages on Instagram. One is the Texas Divorce Coach. The other one is Happiness in the Heartache. And then on Facebook, it's Happiness in the Heartache.
So if they just search Happiness in the Heartache, they'll find it in most of those places. Very
Yes,
good.
sir.
Excellent. Tegan, thanks for bringing your mom by today.
Oh, of course.
What is Girl Team? What is that?
So we have this thing, since my mom only has 3 daughters, We put girl team, and one Christmas we all had matching sweatshirts and like those buffalo printed leggings. And it's like my mom's text with my sisters and I is called the girl team, and it's just like a thing that we've developed over the years. And
It's like a family inside joke.
yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. I appreciate you both stopping by today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Tegan. And thank you for watching StoryPower TV. And I also want to remind you, if you're curious, who is Jesus to me and why do I care? Ask him. I mean, literally, just ask him. Get in a dark corner where it's nobody but you and him and ask this question: Jesus, do you love me? I promise you will be blown away by the answer. First, because he is going to answer. If you call on his name, he will answer. He promised. He doesn't break promises. And then you're going to be blown away by the fact that no matter what you've done or where you are or who you are or where you grew up, he does love you enough to die for you. And he will run to your rescue at any point. If you haven't heard the song Mercy Came Running, go look that up. It's a promise. He will not leave you where he cannot find you, and he will not leave you where he cannot save you. Ask him. Watch him show up. I'm J Loren Norris with StoryPower TV. Have a blessed day.